All right, so we're back for another episode of Myth Busting March. Still March in Canada over here, so this is still within the time frame. But we're excited to kind of break down some more of the myths that we've had come through, questions we've had asked. So we're going to do the same format as we did last time. Ben is going to have 2 minutes to respond to each question or expand on each myth. And if you missed our last episode, I would encourage you go and listen to that one because we recap kind of the approach that we take when answering these questions as well and all of the different elements that need to be considered when answering them. But excited to dig into these questions. We have some good ones today. We have some about counting calories, fiber, weight loss, scale weight, alcohol, protein shakes for muscle growth, or sorry, protein for muscle growth and when to consume it. So a lot of good stuff. So make sure you stick around. And if you have any further questions, of course, feel free to reach out to us.
Yes.
Anything you want to say before we get started?
No, I gotta save it. I gotta save it for my 2 minutes. This always makes the clock makes me nervous, Mags. I feel like in the last one I was talking really fast. I feel like the time doesn't adjust the amount that I'm saying. It just makes me say it fast. So
I mean, I understood it, but I also talk very fast. So I think on YouTube there's an option to slow the sound down. So if you need to use that, feel free because we want to get in as much information as we possibly can here.
yeah. And I guess again, just a precursor, we did say this at the start of the last one, but I'll say it again just quickly. Obviously 2 minutes is not going to be a huge amount of time to really deep dive. So keep in mind, probably my answers are going to be general in nature, which means it will mostly apply to most of what we see. But definitely, are we not saying that any of what we're saying is a universal rule across the board in every case?
Very good. Now, before I get started, would you prefer that I interrupt you and say 30 seconds or just put up a 30?
See how we're going. If you feel like if I want a good one, if I've gone off on a real good one, Mags, maybe just give me a signal.
Okay. Okay. Got it. All right. So the first question is, can you lose weight without counting calories?
Yeah, good question. This is a question we get a lot, and the answer is yes, you can. But the longer answer is whether or not you're counting the calories. The calories are still going to count, right? So if you weigh, measure, track, obviously your understanding of calories and macros and portions is going to be a skill that you are going to work on and hone and develop a little bit more. But if that's not your bag, which for a lot of our clients it isn't, then what we're really looking at doing is understanding that kind of portion sizing in terms of how much food and things is taking up on your plate, and obviously reducing given to where they currently are if their goal is weight loss. So they don't need to necessarily track and count, but you do need to be aware of a change in how much you're eating. What we typically see with clients who are opting for a more visual based approach and a less detailed approach is if we can reduce the amount of processed food that they're eating and replace it with whole foods, even though we're increasing the food volume that they're eating, we're actually decreasing the total amount of calories because there's much less caloric density in whole foods than there is in processed foods. So if you're looking to reduce your total caloric intake, the easiest thing to do is to cut out the crap and eat more real food, more vegetables, more meats, etc., etc. Especially if you're active, it's incredibly hard to overeat when you're eating real food, right? As opposed to looking at Easter coming up, it's incredibly easy to smash 1,000 calories or so out of tiny mini eggs and not even realize and still be hungry. And that's generally where the damage gets done.
Mm-hmm. And eating out as well, too. Eating out.
Yeah, and eating out. When you kind of hand over or buy meals on the run, you are kind of designating the control of what goes into your food, right? And things like sauces and marinades and spreads and things like that don't necessarily add any volume or have much of a visual impact. And when you look at what you're eating, can pack quite a punch. It's that old like ranch dressing or Caesar dressing, right? Like you're getting like you think you're making the healthy option by like ordering the salad and then you drown it in Caesar or ranch, and it's like you may as well have just got the burger and the chips, right?
Yeah. All right. At time. So it's perfect.
Time. Oh, I just made it.
Sure. We'll go with that. Okay. Question number 2. Is it true that you have a limited amount of time after a workout to consume protein for muscle growth?
Okay, so we're talking about here what we used to call like the anabolic window, aka the window of gains. And I remember this one. Like this was when you first started training. Like even before you had a gym bag, it was like you had to have your protein straight away, or like all the work that you'd done in the gym was gone, right? We know now that it's not the case. What we see is that the body definitely has a ceiling in terms of how much protein you can really utilize in a given serving, right? A given instance. And if you're going to meet what we sort of set as a standard goal for most people of protein, then you need to be having a pretty even spread throughout the course of the day, right? Definitely when we would say that, the most important time to kind of refuel that carb, right, is post workout, when you have really depleted your system, and you want to get some protein in ASAP to start getting those recovery mechanisms underway, protein synthesis and muscle rebuilding and repairing. Definitely what usually gets left out of this conversation is carbohydrates. And there definitely is a window there immediately post exercise where your sensitivity to insulin is higher than at baseline, which means your ability to store glucose in the muscle is much higher than it is regularly. So, and what we tell most of our clients is carbs before training and then carbs with protein post workout. So protein spread evenly through the day, but make sure you are getting some immediately post-workout. But slamming 4 scoops of protein powder 10 minutes after you finish your training session is not going to result in a huge amount of lean mass laydown.
Perfect. That time. Yeah, I remember when I first started going to the gym, I had to ask my coach, like, is it okay if I don't just chug my protein shake? Like if I just let it sit and like sip on it over the course of like 30 minutes? Thinking that I literally like immediately post workout had to chug the whole protein shake or else it was not worth it.
Yeah,
that's funny thinking about
yeah, I think definitely as I've been in this game a little bit longer, and definitely as we've worked more and more within like the CrossFit circles, I am much more on my clients who do have a lot of those performance-based goals to be getting in carbohydrate immediately post-workout. And that's usually more because if you behaviorally, like if you finish your WOD and you're knackered and you kind of pack your stuff up and then maybe you roll out for 5 or 10 minutes and then maybe you kind of jump on a bike and cool down for another 5 or 10 minutes. And then you go and have a shower and you get changed. Then you drive home. We start to get to a point where it's like, it's now been an hour to an hour and a half since we've finished training, which also might mean that it's now been 3.5, 4 hours, since our last meal. So more so than the importance of it, like having to be immediately post-workout with protein, is that we're running out of time to consume all that protein over the course of the day. And if you're a 90-kilo male who's trying to get stronger, you're probably on 200 grams plus of protein a day. So you're splitting that into 30 to 40 gram serves. You can't afford to have a 4-hour window where you're not getting any protein, because then you're just going to try to force it all in ineffectively at the end of the day, right? Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, definitely I think more people could benefit from having a bit more of their carbohydrate immediately post-workout for a longer session, even bringing some intra-workout. But also keep in mind that that's not bonus carbs. Like that still needs to come in from your total carb and calorie goal for the day. We're just playing with the timing of it a little bit more.
Excellent.
Right on 2 minutes.
That was my fault. I continued the conversation. All right, next question. I guess this isn't really a question, this is a myth, but you need a supplement to reach your fiber goal.
Yeah. So this is essentially a similar one to protein, right? Like whole foods first is definitely the approach that we want. And if you're eating a decent amount, anywhere from your kind of like 500, 600, 700 grams of vegetables per day, and you're getting some stuff like some oats and some other grains and things in there for your fiber, chia seeds, things like that, you should be fine. If you are the kind of person who really struggles to eat vegetables, if you're taking like a green supplement because you're only kind of having a serve of fruit or veg a day, that's definitely something that we'd want to address behaviorally. But in the meantime, we might find it helpful to get you some fiber sooner rather than later. Okay. Fiber for digestion, especially with clients who have a higher range of cholesterol, we tend to see that higher fiber intakes can be beneficial, as fiber like binds to cholesterol agents and kind of you pass them through, right? But if you're kind of looking for that 10, 11 grams or a bit under 7, 8 grams ish per 1,000 calories that you're kind of ingesting. So if you're on your 3,000 calories, we want you pretty close to that 30 grams of fiber a day. It becomes a lot of veggies, right? So it can be useful. Supplements have their place for sure, but we don't want to be substituting eating more vegetables because you can just take a fiber supplement. You're kind of missing the point now.
30 seconds left. Perfect.
I'll take 30 seconds off the overtime from the from the last one.
Excellent. Okay, next myth is all weight loss is a good thing.
Yeah, so this is a huge one, and probably one that's blown way out of proportion. And maybe given the book that we're reading this month, Mags, this might be a super appropriate one. But weight loss is not inherently good and weight gain is not inherently bad. And ultimately, it depends on the goal that we're working towards and what we're trying to achieve, right? We certainly know that most people who come to us telling us their goal is weight loss, what they're really aiming for is change in body composition or a loss in body fat. Now, body fat loss and weight loss are two completely different things. And that's something that's generally not explained very well and not understood very well either. So if we have a client who is working for a specific performance goal and they start to lose weight, that might actually be detrimental to their performance. It's not inherently a good thing in that situation, especially if people are achieving weight loss by really dumping the bottom out of their caloric intake. They might be losing scale weight, but if they're not preserving their lean mass, if they're not making sure that they're, watching the good sort of stuff, that lean mass they've been fighting to put on, well, you're lighter, but you're actually fatter, right? So is that the goal? Was the goal to get fatter as a relative percentage of total body weight? I haven't seen it. Have you seen it? Yeah, exactly. So I think this one comes down to really just being very mindful of defining terms. And if we're talking about losing body fat and becoming a little bit leaner, then we don't necessarily have to see weight loss for that to appear. We might see weight stagnicity, or we might even see an increase in scale weight if we're doing a lot of resistance training, right?
Mm-hmm. 10 seconds to spare. That's a deep question, and we could probably have a whole hour-long chat on that one, and maybe that's a sign that we should. But I think that was a very good synopsis.
Yeah, that is one that comes up a lot, is people that I want to lose weight, I want to lose weight, I want to lose weight. And ultimately, this is usually we try to save the ranty questions for last, but I'll do this one quickly. Ultimately, what we're talking about is, as a community, we're way too hyper-focused on scale weight as a metric of success, right? Now, unless you're competing in weightlifting or you're a fighter or there's another weight class-based sport that you need to be a specific weight for, then your scale weight is mostly irrelevant. It's one of many metrics that we would look at. And if weight loss is the goal, then obviously we're going to be looking at it. But for my clients that are trying to lose weight, I much prefer to use things like measurements, photos, things like that, because, like we said, and like we've seen, we're going to have them eating more whole foods. Those whole foods are going to be heavier in general as they're eating more of them. We know we've done 100 episodes on things that can affect scale weight, that have no impact on changing body composition. So if we are using scales as one metric and the scales slow down or stop, which they will as you lose more weight and kind of get closer and closer and closer to what that optimal weight is, we don't want people to become dejected, unmotivated, because all of a sudden the scale's not dropping off these huge numbers, which potentially it might have in the beginning, right? So yeah, I definitely think that scale weight is blown way out of proportion in terms of its importance. And the other thing too, that is, I've never met anyone whose goal weight is higher than their optimal body weight. Maybe powerlifters, strongmen, maybe probably the only community where we see that. But especially for our general population clients, most people have a goal weight, which is an arbitrary number that doesn't necessarily make sense when you dig a little bit deeper. Why is it 50 kilos. Why is that your goal weight? Like, how did you arrive at that number? And for many people, you follow the conversation on, and maybe that was a time, you know, when they were late teens and they were training 3 or 4 times a day, playing school sport, quite active lifestyle. No one had a license. Everyone walked or rode their bikes everywhere. Responsibilities were at a minimum. You had no mortgage, no kids, no full-time job. It seems like an unrealistic approach to me that you would want to try to get to that point when the circumstances surrounding everything else have changed so much, right? So yeah, I do caution people, if your goal is to lose weight, asking why your goal is to lose weight. Maybe just reconfirm that your goal isn't actually to lose body fat, right? And if you're not sure between the two, maybe reach out and let's have a chat about it. Yeah, because ultimately we don't want to do anything either that's quick fix for a long-term result. It just doesn't work. Yeah. And which is usually the case when it comes to seeing immediate decrease on scale as our one feedback mechanism for how well we're doing, right?
Excellent. What was a?
Well, what would you rather? Would you rather be heavier and leaner, or like lighter and fatter?
Heavier and leaner.
Yeah. So it's not really then a scale weight question, is it?
No. Body composition.
Yeah.
What I'm enjoying seeing is in initial consults with potential clients is a lot. It's like a gradual increase of people already understanding the concept of body composition versus scale weight, and it's really great to see. And you know, you're seeing that a lot on social media and stuff as well. So yeah, just changing the world one podcast at a time, Ben.
Well, yeah. I mean, I would love to think that hopefully that's come from, you know, this is our 6th year of doing this now, right? We've got 1,000, a year of doing the podcast, over 6,000 downloads. Granted, the 20 of you that listen to this have listened to every episode. Hopefully listens are so high, but you know, we've almost done 100 seminars worldwide. We've been into 6 or 7 countries to give them. It's hopefully that we're starting to see a little bit of a ripple effect where people are taking away the information that we're providing. It's making sense to them, and hopefully that's the information that's kind of getting passed on within social circles and stuff like that too. So I think that you're right. Like, we are seeing more, especially from our female population, we are seeing more and more clients wanting to sit down with more performance-based metrics, which is really encouraging because, again, you take an element of pressure off when you can focus on barbell weight instead of scale weight, or when you can look at benchmark workout times instead of staring in the mirror and like praying for an improvement in aesthetics, right? And so, yeah, I think you are seeing. Sorry?
Something you have so much more control over.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think we are definitely seeing a turn. But I also think that there's an element of confirmation bias within our community where we are so focused on our community, and that is the messaging, that maybe we're also missing the fact that it's still not the majority, it's not the masses, which is the goal, right? Like, I would love for it to be a complete rarity that someone has a weight loss goal. I would love to get to that point. That would be a real metric of like, perfect. Us and the providers that we work with and the community that we're building is starting to really have a positive effect on community health, right?
Let's do it. Let's keep
2 minutes, made it, just.
All right. The last question, and I feel like this one might turn into a little bit of a rant as well, so buckle up, but I'll set the timer anyways. What is the true impact of alcohol? And I'm assuming this question is asking in terms of health, performance, and body composition.
Yeah, so this is a really ranty question. So maybe slow down the timer on this one, Mags, or I'll speed up how fast I talk. Alcohol is a super, super interesting topic for a number of reasons. And I think mostly because kind of similar to the idea we have of weight loss and fat loss, we have this understanding of legality and like health somewhat being aligned. And just because something is legal, it doesn't necessarily mean it's good for us, right? And booze, especially culturally and especially here in Australia, it's very different everywhere around the world in terms of its consumption rate. But a lot of what we see generally, particularly in the West, is it's not you having a glass of wine as a complement to your palate to embody the tones of the food that you're eating, and you kind of looking at it as part of a meal. It's very much a drink to get drunk culture, right? And first and foremost, we need to understand that alcohol is a poison. It's fermented, right? There's a reason you feel like shit the next day. And so typically, I mean, we can talk about this a few ways, but it's a leading cause of inflammation. So if you're anyone who struggles with a super high amount of joint soreness, any kind of gut issues like IBS, if you find you're someone who bloats quite easily anyway, like you're already highly inflamed for the most amount of time. Or even if your training schedule is super big and you're doing a strength program and your knees and shoulders aching like shit, alcohol is going to perpetuate that and make it worse, right? So it's a leading cause of inflammation for one. For number two, I mean, we can talk about your calorie intake from alcohol is more akin to fats, right, than it is to protein or carbs. So you're getting about 7 kcals per gram of alcohol, plus whatever sugar comes in the mixes that you're drinking with it. And then obviously it has a flow-on effect. You know, no one's really ever making great or fantastic nutritional choices after a 12-pack of Bud Lights, right? So there's that kind of flow-on effect as well. Obviously, ethanol, alcohol is a macro, like we can't store it. It's non-naturally occurring. So because we can't store it, we'll store everything else until we've burnt off the alcohol as an energy, right? Source of energy. And the reason a hangover makes you feel like shit is because it's such a poor quality source of fuel that it's going to be such a poor quality source of output, right? So the true effect of alcohol as well is also, I guess, in, you know, well, one, you're inflamed. Two, it's going to impede your recovery because of that. But three, it's going to inhibit your ability to really get any proper, deep, restful sleep too. So again, if you kind of look environmentally at alcohol, if you're not going to bed until 2 or 3 anyway, and then you have an inability even at that point to get any kind of restful and restorative sleep, is obviously going to compound a lot of factors there too, right? So we've got our calories up, we've got some probably more highly inflammatory foods as well that have been consumed with alcohol, and we're not going to actually start burning through that. So we're more likely to lay it down, to store it, right? Grocery shopping on a Sunday with a hangover is super hard, right? Grocery shopping and then into meal prep with a killer hangover is even harder, which generally means that we're going to start to scramble for mood prep and availability kind of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, instead we've caught up. And so what we can typically see is what was one night off program has all of a sudden turned into like 3 or 4 rubbish days, which is now half a week. Okay. We know that after a bender, after a really big night, it can take up to 2 weeks to fully recover from that, right? To really get back to where you were. But if you're doing that every Saturday night, you are theoretically always a week further behind as you go further ahead, right? So I think that kind of jovial, like, oh, it's just a couple of beers is a little bit like misunderstood and misinterpreted, right? Like, I think the effects are much larger than we give credit for. Now, again, not saying that like you can never drink, but I think we need to be much more aware when we're making the decision to drink. Is the juice worth the squeeze on this occasion? And if ultimately we have these big lofty goals of health or performance, the argument would come in. So if you're serious about that, like, why are you drinking 2 nights a week, 3 nights a week, right? Yeah, and again with alcohol too, and with food in general, like if we're drinking every night, that's behaviorally something we want to look at. And why? Because it's not for the antioxidants that you're getting from your glass of wine. If you know, it's not a health benefit. Like, we need to stop. Like, telling me there's vegetables on pizza is not going to make me want you to eat pizza every day of the week, you know? Or telling me that fries are just potatoes. Like, we're kind of like, why are we arguing with something that we both know is like not the juice? Like, if you're not doing it for health benefits, right? So there's always more to the story there. But yeah, culturally it's hard, and socially it's hard. And we want our clients to not feel like they're choosing between health and a social life, or being able to take, you know, part in their groups, occasions and events, which particularly in Oz and Canada as well, you know, tend to be built around alcohol, right? And that can be difficult to navigate, you know, especially when you get to an event like that and tell people you're not drinking. Like, you become the scorned, you know? And I think that in many cases, the reason for that is people kind of take it abruptly because they probably know that they shouldn't be drinking either, and no one wants to drink alone. So it's just easy to give you shit and tear you down.
A little bit of projection there.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you do have to drink, well, not if you do have to drink, if you choose to drink, but like, do you need to drink 20 to enjoy the social occasion? Probably not. Special occasions, go for it. But again, if we're talking about you go out and you have a big night whenever it's a wedding or someone's birthday, and you're talking about 5 or 6 occasions kind of over the course of the year, like we can handle that. But if it's something that you're doing weekly, really weekly, then it's like, well, maybe we need to revisit our goals and our expectations of what's actually achievable if this is kind of something that you're not willing to give up, right?
Yeah, and just to quickly touch on the behavioral side of it too. This is something that came up when I was reading one of Brene Brown's pieces. But that idea of it's not necessarily what you do, although we just covered all of that piece of this, but it's not always about what you're doing, but why you're doing it. And, I think especially over the last year with COVID and lockdown and everything like that, there's been a lot of use of alcohol almost as like a crutch or as an escape, because there's not a whole lot else to do, or not a whole lot other options in terms of how to escape. So I think, if you're struggling in that regard, it's about developing different practices and different tools that will allow you to lean into, whatever discomfort it is that you might be feeling. So instead of asking, okay, what's the quickest way that I can get rid of this anxiety or this stress or this, whatever it may be, maybe start by asking yourself, okay, where are these feelings coming from? Why am I feeling this way? And try and figure out what brings you actual comfort rather than just, drowning yourself in a couple bottles of wine. But I think that comes with practicing and developing your self-awareness. And again, like when you're going out to a party or whatever it may be, if you're choosing to drink, I think, having that self-awareness piece is critical in order to make sure that you have like 1 or 2 drinks instead of 10 to 20 drinks. It's just that understanding of why you're doing it. There's a lot more that we could go into here, but I think I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just finish. Like, it definitely, I think as you tend to get older, like it just hurts more and more. And eventually get to a point where like the hangover lasts longer than the party, But again, if you're someone who doesn't binge drink necessarily, but has like 1 or 2 glasses of wine 4 or 5 days, what we kind of see is you end up having this sort of level of dampener, right? And you don't notice it because it's such a gradual thing that occurs, until you stop. And we've had plenty of clients that, will be 2 or 3 weeks on program, and they've gone from having 10 or 11 drinks over the course of the week to none. And they're like, oh, I feel amazing. And it's like, well, you feel amazing because we've cleaned up your diet. But too, like, I also wonder how much of that is like, you're not slightly inebriated or hungover or always in this state of recovery, and that just becomes your norm, right? If you wake up every morning and you get kicked in the head, you think it's normal to go through life with a headache. And it's not until one morning you get up and you don't get kicked in the head that you think like, fuck, how good is this?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we're always pretty big to harp on like, what's the behavior behind, or what's the process behind the behavior?
What's driving it?
Yeah, but ultimately, like, the results you want are generally behind the work that you don't want to do. And so deep diving and understand why you need to drink is a lot more confronting and a lot harder than just like pouring a drink and having a drink and dealing with it another time, right? So yeah. Tough.
Excellent. Well, that's all the questions. We definitely saved the longest one for last, but super excited about these and sharing them with the community and getting some more questions. Although it's no longer March, still happy to answer any questions and sit down for some myth busting sessions every once in a while. So keep the questions coming through on social, directly to us, commenting below, whatever it may be.
So if you are engaging on the socials, we actually do have the team keeping sheets of questions and stuff that are asked. So I think that, like we said at the beginning of the month, we're never going to get them all done this month. But I think, Mags, maybe every couple of months we can just compile a list of, hey, these are the questions we've had, training, recovery, performance, or nutrition related, and kind of go through them. Okay.
Excellent. Love it. Well, thanks, Ben. We'll work on your timing next time. I think you talked a bit slower though, so kudos.
Yeah, well, speed me up on YouTube instead of slowing me down, and yeah.
All right, well, we'll catch you guys in the next one. Hope you enjoyed this, and as always, reach out if you have any questions.
Thanks, Mags.